Look, man, here's the thing. People don't really stop and think about how deep the roots of these two faiths actually go. Like, when you bring up Christianity and Islam in a conversation, the average person's brain instantly jumps to conflict. They think about the Crusades, holy wars, clashes in the Middle East, modern terrorism, all this loaded history. It's like their first reaction is, oh, those two religions are enemies. But nobody slows down and goes, wait a second, let's zoom out. Let's actually look at where they came from. Because when you do that, you realize something that blows your mind. These are not alien systems, not two random worldviews. They're literally interconnected traditions born out of the same soil, drinking from the same well, addressing the same God. And I mean that literally the same God, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, the creator of the universe that Jews, Christians, and Muslims all agree on. But the way it gets presented in our culture, you'd think they were worshiping two different beings, as if one side invented some new deity. And that's just not true, man. That's ignorance. And what really hits me, especially after digging into it with guys like Mel Gibson, who's obsessed with faith, with history, with how the Bible ties into culture, is that Islam doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. It's not like Muhammad, peace be upon him, just walked into the desert one day and thought, you know what, I'm going to invent a religion. No, man, it's not some alien idea. It's more like a continuation. It's part of that same prophetic tradition that stretches back thousands of years. Whether people accept it or not, historically it's undeniable. Islam is basically saying, hey, the same God who sent Jesus, who sent Moses, Noah, and Abraham, that same God sent Muhammad as the final messenger. And that's heavy, dude. That's like the final seal on this long chain of revelation. And here's the part that always messes with me. Christians already know what prophecy is. They already know about revelation, about divine law, about God sending guidance from above. They read the Old Testament, the New Testament. They know about prophets being sent to warn people, to call them back to God. And then Islam comes along and says, boom, here's the final piece of the puzzle. That's not competition, man. That's connection, that's lineage. Mel said something that really landed with me. He goes, dude, if you look at the moral framework, the Ten Commandments, the stuff about honoring your parents, worshipping one God, not killing, not stealing, not cheating, it's the same foundation. And then he pointed out that both religions are literally waiting for the same guy. Christians are waiting for Jesus to return. Muslims are waiting for Jesus to return. 2 billion here, 2 billion there, and they're all looking at the sky, waiting for the same man to descend from heaven. And yet, somehow, instead of standing shoulder to shoulder, they're still arguing, still seeing each other as enemies. It's crazy, man. It makes no sense, and the wild part, Mel's a Catholic guy. He made The Passion of the Christ one of the most powerful depictions of Jesus' suffering and sacrifice. The guy is deeply invested in Christianity, and yet he's sitting there acknowledging that Islam doesn't dismiss Christ. It doesn't erase him, it honors him, it reveres him, it calls him the Messiah, and that's where the connection gets undeniable. Because if you stop an average Christian on the street and ask, hey, what does Islam say about Jesus? Most of them will shrug. They'll say something like, oh, Muslims reject him, or they don't believe in him, total ignorance. But when they find out Muslims actually love him, respect him, call him Isa ibn Maryam Jesus, son of Mary, their jaws drop. That's when the walls start to crumble, because the real enemy is ignorance, not faith. And this is why conversations like this matter, man. Because once you shine a light on that ignorance, you start building bridges. And when you dig deeper, it gets even crazier. Look at Abraham. He's literally the patriarch, the root that connects Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The Bible calls him the father of nations. The Quran calls him a leader, an obedient servant of God. He's that central figure, In both traditions, the Bible and the Quran tell the same story about him being willing to sacrifice his son for God. Absolute surrender, absolute submission. That's literally what the word Islam means, submission to God. And Christians see that story as the ultimate proof of faith. Same with Muslims. Different angles, same core lesson. Faith means surrender, trust, obedience to the divine. Mel was telling me how in Catholic tradition there's deep reverence for Abraham's obedience. In Islam, it's celebrated every single year during Eid al-Adha. Muslims around the world slaughter animals to commemorate Abraham's willingness to give up his son for God. And you step back and go, damn, same story, same message, different rituals, but the moral is identical. And when you zoom out, that's the picture you get again and again. It's one stream of revelation that's been flowing through human history. Different communities drink from it in different cups, but it's the same water, same source, and what do people do? They start fighting over the cups. My cup is better, shinier, holier. Meanwhile, the water is identical. That's what arrogance and ignorance do. They blind people to the obvious. And here's where it gets even more fascinating. When you start lining up the prophets mentioned in the Bible and the Quran, the overlap is insane. Noah, Abraham, Moses, David, Solomon, Jonah, it's like reading the same family tree. And it's not just names, it's values. Don't bear false witness. That's in the Bible. The Quran says the same thing, word for word. Over and over again, you see this mirror effect. You're not dealing with two random codes. You're dealing with the same root system feeding two massive trees. And sometimes I think the reason they clash so hard is because they're so damn similar. It's like cousins. Cousins fight, man, they butt heads. But at the end of the day, they share DNA, and that's what blows my mind about Jesus in Islam, because he's not some side character. He's not a footnote. He's not just a teacher. He's literally one of the greatest prophets, the Messiah, born of a virgin, performing miracles by God's permission, even speaking as a baby in the cradle. Muslims revere him so deeply. Christians say Jesus is everything. Muslims say, yes, Jesus is everything, but he's not God. He's the servant of God, the prophet of God, and that's where the big divide comes in, but the respect, the love, the reverence that's shared. And nobody talks about it, because the media and history books have been obsessed with war stories, with crusades, with clashes. Nobody's out here saying, hey, these two religions are like brothers arguing over interpretation. And then Mel brings up Mary. And that's when it gets wild, because Mary, the Virgin Mary, mother of Jesus, is mentioned more in the Quran than in the New Testament. Think about that. She's the only woman named in the entire Quran, and she even has a chapter named after her, Surah Maryam. That blows people's minds, man, because they've been fed this idea that Islam somehow dismisses Christianity. No, Islam honors it. It says, yes, Mary was pure. Yes, Jesus was born miraculously. Yes, these events happened. And when a Christian actually hears that, it changes everything. Suddenly, the Muslim isn't an outsider. He's part of the same family story. And that's what I love, man. Because when you strip away the politics, the crusades, the colonialism, the media spin your left with people who believe in one God, who follow prophets, who pray, who fast, who give charity, who believe in a judgment day, who strive for morality. That's not division, that's unity with a different accent. It's like two people saying the same word in slightly different dialects. God and Allah, same meaning, same source, and yet people fight like crazy because of labels. And here's where it gets even more mind-blowing, man. Because when you start digging into how both Islam and Christianity talk about the end of times, you realize the overlap isn't just historical, it's futuristic. Like, both religions literally say Jesus is coming back, not metaphorically, not symbolically, but for real. Muslims believe he's going to descend from heaven, defeat the Antichrist, establish justice, break false ideologies, and bring peace. Christians, same thing. They're waiting for Jesus to return and set things straight. So stop and think about that for a second. Two religions that the world paints as bitter rivals are actually sitting here telling the same story about the same guy who's supposed to show up at the end of history. How the hell is that a coincidence? It's not. That's lineage. That's a shared narrative. That's divine connection. And Mel, man, he was fired up about this. He said people think Muhammad just strolled into the desert, cooked up a book, and convinced people to follow him. But when you actually open the Quran, it's constantly pointing back. It keeps saying, remember the gospel, remember the Torah, remember what God told the children of Israel. It's not erasing the past. It's reaffirming it. It's saying, hey, those revelations were real. They just got distorted. Here's the message again in its pure form. And then you realize Christianity did the same thing. Jesus himself, over and over again in the New Testament, quotes Moses. He quotes the Old Testament. He says, I didn't come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. That's the exact same model, man. A prophet shows up, doesn't erase what came before, but confirms it, clarifies it, fulfills it. So if you zoom out far enough, you see this beautiful chain like a relay race. Moses passes the baton to Jesus. Jesus passes it down the line. Muhammad takes it, runs the final lap, seals the race. And when you frame it that way, all the fighting, all the division, all the bloodshed just looks ridiculous. Because what you're looking at is literally one story told in chapters. And it makes you wonder how much of this division is actually about faith and how much is about ego. About empires, kings, popes, caliphs, politicians. Because if you look at the teachings of Jesus and Muhammad, peace be upon them, it's all humility. Worship one God, serve humanity, forgive, show mercy. Strive for justice, and yet history is soaked in blood because men wanted land, money, power. They dressed it up as religion, but it was empire, straight up. Mel dropped this line that stuck with me. Maybe the devil's greatest victory was making the children of Abraham fight each other instead of recognizing their shared father. Damn, that hit me hard, because that's real. You divide people who should be united. You keep them weak. You pit cousins against each other. They waste their energy fighting while outsiders swoop in to exploit them. Look at history. Colonial powers used Christian, Muslim division to dominate both. Look at today. Media thrives on pushing the clash of civilizations a narrative. They want us to see each other as enemies, because if we actually recognize the shared DNA, the shared God, the shared values, that's power, that's unity, and unity scares the system. And man, the more you read the scriptures side by side, the more obvious it gets. Look at forgiveness. In the Bible, Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, love your enemy, turn the other cheek, don't repay evil with evil. In the Quran, it literally says, repel evil with that which is better. Forgive if you can. Mercy is closer to piety. That's not contradiction, that's harmony. That's two instruments playing slightly different notes but creating one melody. And that's why Islam calls Christians and Jews people of the book. It's basically saying, you guys are family, same revelation, different chapters, same author. But people miss that because they're stuck in the trauma of history, crusades, reconquista, terrorism, colonialism. The pain overshadows the connection. But if you isolate the scriptures, strip away the blood and politics, you see it so clearly. Connection, overlap, unity, and one of the craziest things, Muslims believe Jesus isn't done. He's coming back, not Muhammad, not another prophet, Jesus. That alone should make Christians stop and go, wait, what? They believe in him that much. And yeah, they do. He's going to return, defeat the Antichrist, restore justice. Same as the Christian narrative, and yet we're told these two religions are polar opposites. Nah, man, that's not opposition. That's family arguing at the dinner table, and Mel kept hammering this point. Muhammad wasn't erasing Jesus. He was confirming him, Just like Jesus wasn't erasing Moses, he was fulfilling him. It's a chain, a progression, a story unfolding across centuries, and when you finally see it that way, you realize how stupid all this fighting is. It's like two brothers punching each other over who inherited Dad's house, when the truth is they both did. And it's not just the beliefs, man. It's the practices, too. Prayer, for example. Muslims pray 5 times a day. They bow, they put their forehead on the ground. That's not some new exotic thing. That's literally how the prophets prayed in the Bible. Moses fell on his face before God. Jesus, in the Garden of Gethsemane, fell on his face in prayer. Abraham bowed before the Lord. It's the same posture of surrender. Islam just kept it alive. It preserved it. Same with fasting. Muslims fast in Ramadan. Christians fast in Lent. Different styles. Same principle: discipline the body, elevate the soul, cut out indulgence, focus on God. Same medicine, 2 bottles. Charity. Christians talk about tithing, giving to the poor. Islam has Zak at give too. 5% of your wealth to the needy. Both faiths hammer the same point. If you love God, take care of people. Feed the hungry, support the widow, help the orphan. That's not a side issue, that's central. And that's the kicker, man. Both religions are obsessed with justice. Not just personal morality, but social justice. Care for the vulnerable, stand against oppression, speak truth to power. Imagine if Muslims and Christians actually worked together on that shared ethic instead of fighting. Imagine 2 massive communities, billions of people, all putting their weight behind compassion, justice, and mercy. The world would look totally different. Mel said something wild that really hit me. He goes, maybe the reason the world keeps us divided is because if we were united, we'd be unstoppable. And he's right. Look at the wars in history. Christians versus Muslims. Who benefits? Not the people, not the faith. The ones who benefit are the rulers, the empires, the outsiders exploiting the chaos. Divide and conquer, man. Oldest trick in the book. And even in the scriptures, the harmony is everywhere. Open the Psalms, God's mercy, God's compassion. Open the Quran, every chapter starts with, in the name of God, the most merciful, the most compassionate. That's not division. That's echo. That's the same truth reverberating across languages and cultures. And here's the thing that really gets me, man. If Christians actually sat down and read the Quran, just a translation, nothing fancy, they'd be shocked. They'd find Jesus all over it, Mary all over it, Moses, Abraham, Noah, David, Solomon, stories they already know, morality they already live by. It would flip their world. You upside down, because suddenly the Muslim wouldn't be some stranger. He'd be a cousin, part of the same damn story. And that's the kind of shift that could literally change how billions of people see each other. Imagine if instead of suspicion, there was recognition. Instead of hostility, there was familiarity. That's game changing. That's worth dedicating your life to. Because if we don't start recognizing those connections, we're doomed to keep replaying the same cycles of hate and division, century after century. And man, when you take a step back and look at the big picture, it gives you goosebumps. Monotheism, one God, one creator, one accountability system. That's the heart of both faiths. Everything else, rituals, theology, denominations, is detail. But the core, it's one, and you can feel it when you strip away the noise. That's why I think conversations like this are so damn important. Because it's not about watering down differences or pretending they don't exist. It's about zooming out and realizing the shared DNA, the shared foundation. It's about seeing your brother instead of your enemy. And if more people did that, man, this world would look like a whole different place.